Hey guys, what's going on? Jeff here from Films at Home, and in today's video we need to take a look at whether 8K TVs are actually needed in your home theater. Hey everyone, thanks for coming back to the channel. I really appreciate you tuning in for this video. A lot of people have been asking me about 8K TVs and if 8K Blu-rays and movies are a reality and all this kind of hype that's going on around CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, which is happening in Vegas literally right now. And I wanted to address some of that because there's a lot of concern about whether you should be buying 4K TVs or 4K Blu-rays because there's this next thing on the horizon, and whether it's even worth it, whether you should even begin to think about upgrading. And now with 8K TVs finally hitting the market, you know, is it even feasible to go ahead and make that upgrade, and does it make sense for your home theater? Now, if you do like home theater and Blu-ray, 4K, movie collecting, all that sort of stuff, please subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. Turn on notifications and make sure you like this video so that others can see this and get the information they need when it pertains to 8K TVs. Now, with 8K TVs, there's sort of three major things I want to talk about when it comes to their feasibility as a home theater item. First of all, what can your eye see? Is 8K TV even possible for the human eye to tell the difference between 4K and 8K? That's one. Number two, let's talk about viewing distance and screen size and whether you're ever going to be able to take advantage of the 8K resolution and really see a difference. And then three, what kind of content is realistically going to be out there at release, and what kind of content is maybe coming down the line in the future that you could actually take advantage of on your 8K TV. So we'll break it up into those three parts, and I'll try to run through each quickly with some graphics and other sources that you can look at so that you get a feel for what I'm talking about. So the first thing we need to talk about when it comes to 8K TVs is sort of the big question: can the human eye really make out the difference between 4K and 8K? This was even a debate when we went from 1080p or 2K roughly into 4K TVs. And so there's some basic statistics and science out there that I can share with you that helps explain that. And the way people always want to break it down is sort of in megapixels. That's the way people kind of think. That's the way that images are presented. And that's sort of the way we translate, 4K is equal to this megapixels, all that stuff. So I'll break that down first. But basically 4K is equal to about 8.5 megapixels, and then 8K brings that up to 33 megapixels. Okay, so that's the baseline numbers. 8.5 for 4K, 4 times that is roughly 33 megapixels for 8K image. Now, the human eye in a perfect condition, staring at a singular image without moving your eye, is said to be able to perceive 576 megapixels of data, which is insane, right? You're never going to get a picture. 8K is 33, remember, and we're talking about 576. It's never going to be a picture that you can actually take full advantage of the human eye. But what you need to realize is when the human eye is actually in motion and is kind of, darting back and forth and watching something like a movie with lots of moving parts, the most we get, according to most scientists, is between 5 and 15 megapixels at the top end. Most people would say that we sit around 7 or 8 megapixels when you're looking at a moving image and your eyes are moving and trying to process a lot of data all at once. Now, a very popular YouTube channel, Vsauce, obviously you probably have heard of them if you've been on YouTube for any amount of time. They have a great video that explains this more in detail. I won't get into the science behind it, but if you want to check that out, I will leave a link down in the description to their video where they break down sort of what resolution the eye can actually see at. But what you need to know is if we're seeing pictures at, say, even if we were at that top end range of 10 to 15 megapixels, which is like 20/20, very, very good vision. 8K is 33 megapixels. And so you're not going to tell the difference between 4K and 8K. Now, you can tell the difference between 1080p and 4K, because remember, 4K is at 8.5 megapixels and your eye can see, 5 maybe 10 on a good day, and 15 with somebody with really good vision, in that range. And so you're going to be able to tell the difference between an image which is 2 megapixels and 8 megapixels like 4K, where 2 megapixels is 1080p. You're going to be able to tell that difference. But with 8K, you're just getting to such a high range. There's so many pixels. Your eye is not going to be able to perceive the real difference between 4K and 8K. Now, there's a placebo effect there. Some people may say, oh, I can definitely tell the difference when they look side by side. But I have a feeling if you gave a blind, I say blind, but you need to be looking, a blind test to somebody with 4K TVs and 8K TVs and made them choose which was which, that's going to be nearly impossible. I think people would go 50-50 just because you have a 1 in 2 shot, but you're not going to get it right as often as you would between a 1080 and a 4K image. And so just in terms of what your eye can see, 8K TV is already unnecessary and really not needed for anybody in any home theater environment. Now, when we talk about screen size and viewing distance, we also need to consider that the 8K TVs are going to be larger screens. So if I say right now that the typical 8K TV is about 80 inches, right? That's what I've been seeing a lot of at CES and some of the announcements. They kind of start at 80 inches and they go up to 100. And then you have to think about projector screens and potential 8K projectors, which we'll get into, which could go up to say 120 inches or more on average. Now, if you had an 80-inch 4K TV, I used a viewing distance calculator. I'll leave a link to that in the description as well. It's a website. You can go in, tell them how many inches your screen is diagonally, and they'll tell you roughly how far you should be sitting away from the screen in order to notice the difference. If you did have an 80-inch screen, to see the utmost amount of detail, you would need to be sitting 5 feet or closer for a 4K TV. If you had an 8K TV at 80 inches, you would need to be sitting 2 feet or closer. You would basically need to have your head inside that TV to notice any difference between 4K and 8K. Otherwise, when you back up from that screen, most people would say, sit 8 to 10 feet away from their screen. And so sure, there's going to be on 80 inches, small noticeable upgrade with 4K resolution. And on a bigger screen, we'll get into that. But on an 80-inch screen, if you're sitting 8 feet away, you're not going to notice any difference between that and a 4K and an 8K TV. It's just not going to happen. Now, let's say that there are 8K projectors that come out, which is highly unlikely because 4K projectors, many of them are already pixel shifting, and there aren't a lot of true 4K projectors that aren't crazy money. But let's just say it gets to that point and you've got 8K projectors, or you have huge TVs like 120 inches. If you had a 120-inch screen, which is massive, remember, in my home theater right here, I sit about 7 feet away from the screen, 8 feet away from the screen, and I have a 92-inch screen, and it's huge. A 120-inch screen, you would need to be 4 feet or closer to notice the difference between 4K and 8K. So nobody in their right mind is going to sit 4 feet away from a 120-inch screen. It would be like sitting in the front row of the movie theater if they moved it up even closer. You would not be able to see the full image. It would be a horrible viewing experience. Most people with a 120-inch screen, you're going to sit, at least 10 feet away from the screen, and that makes more sense. The kind of rating for 4K is about 7 feet away. Any distance closer than that, you'll really be able to pick up the difference easily between HD and 4K images. But even at 10 feet, you're going to start to notice some difference, but you're not going to need to get so close to that screen. That's why with my 4K projector, I can start to tell a difference because I'm sitting roughly 7 feet away on a 92-inch screen. I can start to see things that are different between HD and 4K, but most people are never going to get that 120-inch screen and sit 3 feet away. You'd be absolutely insane. It would make you go blind. Like, I don't know how you would watch a movie like that. And so getting an 8K TV, even at 80 inches, unless you are sitting directly in front of that TV, it makes no sense. Where 8K probably makes more sense is on computer monitors because people are sitting, 1 to 2 feet away from the screen. Now, do you need 80 inches? I would say no. You're never going to have an 80-inch computer monitor. That's nuts. but 8K could potentially help at very close distances like that. Maybe computer gaming or people who are doing video editing may be able to get some use from 8K on a computer monitor because you're so close. But as a TV, it's really just a marketing gimmick, and the resolution is not going to make any difference to you in a typical home theater. And in a typical home environment where most people have 55, 60, 65-inch TVs, 8K makes no sense at all. Now the last thing is the content. What are you actually going to be able to watch on your 8K TV? And so when 4K TVs came out, obviously there was some content to watch. People were already filming in 4K. Smartphones can do 4K. GoPros could do 4K. There were plenty of Hollywood movies that were being filmed in 4K. And obviously with 35 millimeter in film, you can do a lot more. But there was 4K content on YouTube. There's 4K content on Netflix. And very soon after, they introduced 4K Blu-ray discs. And so even if you were a super early adopter of 4K, there was content that you could take advantage of. And by 2015, you had discs, you had all the major sites supporting 4K and HDR, and you were really getting the most out of your 4K TV when it comes to available content. Now for 8K, we have to think about what's going to be available. What can you actually watch in 8K that's not going to be upscaled from 4K, which could look worse on an 8K TV than just true 4K on a 4K panel? And right now the answer is not much. There are some Hollywood movies that are filmed at 8K. I believe Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was filmed at that high of a resolution, but it wasn't finished at that high of a resolution, and that's what matters. And most of the Hollywood movies are finished, as you know, at 2K. Digital intermediate, that's what gets shipped to the theaters. That's what ends up on your Blu-ray and your 4K discs. Most of them are 2K. That's still the overwhelming majority. Now, there are certain movies that do get 4K digital intermediates. They are true 4K titles, but I have not seen anything that's been a true 8K title. There's some documentaries out there, and there are certain sequences of movies that are filmed at 8K, but most of them are finished down at 4K, and you're not getting any higher than that. So if you were to buy an 8K TV, movies are essentially useless for it. You're not going to have movie content, and 8K Blu-ray discs are not going to be a reality. Right now, if you look at sales of physical media, DVD still dominates. Blu-ray is about a quarter of the market, and then 4K discs really only take up 5 or 6% of the market right now. It's still growing a bit, but they're never going to take over DVD, which is, convenience and pricing over quality. A lot of people go with DVD or just standard Blu-ray. Why would 8K discs get introduced? There's no reason. I don't think the studios would ever get behind it, spend the money to do 8K transfers. They're still getting their feet wet on 4K, and it's still yet to be seen whether that's going to be feasible into the future. And so we're never going to get 8K Blu-ray discs. I would bet a lot of money on that never happening. And if it does happen, it's simply a marketing gimmick. There aren't going to be any movies out there right now unless they take old 35 millimeter or 70 millimeter movies and then remaster them again at 8K. You could do that and it might look a tiny bit better, but like I said, it all comes back to your viewing distance from the screen and what your eye can perceive, and your eye is just simply not going to perceive a difference between 4K and 8K, so why would they bother unless they're just trying to get some money out of your pocket? But I would say it's useless. I'm telling you now, 8K discs are unnecessary. Now for streaming and other services, sure, could there be 8K movies on streaming or video on YouTube? Of course, but think about how much power you'll need to stream 8K. Right now, 4K is going to require, anywhere from 15 to 20 megabit per second internet connection. 8K is supposed to take about 100. Most people don't have that, especially on Wi-Fi. If you are hardwired, sure, you might be able to get 100, but it's going to suck up all your bandwidth. You're not going to be able to do anything else. And it's just not realistic to see Netflix jumping into 8K or Amazon Prime or Disney Plus jumping into 8K, when right now they even still have a limited amount of 4K content available, and a lot of it still is not streaming very well. HDR is a problem. There's lots to work out when it comes to 4K streaming before we ever jump into 8K, and then like I said, the movies are often finished at 2K or 4K, and so it's always going to be an upscale, and for a home theater, I prefer having the format. If you got a 4K movie, watch it on a 4K screen. That's going to be the best experience. You're not going to mess with any AI or computer technology trying to upscale 4K to 8K. It could change the image. Who knows how they're actually rendering that? It could screw the whole thing up. I'd prefer to keep it on a 4K TV and keep that 4K to 4K ratio without any upscaling. I already have enough issues with 2K upscaling to 4K. I don't want to go from 4 to 8. It's just going to cause more problems. So that was a lot of information. Like I said, a lot of kind of nerd talk and home theater stuff. And I talked a lot here, but I tried to break it up with some graphics, some real interesting videos that you can go check out, some websites to go read. And there's a lot of information out there, but at the end of the day, 8K just doesn't make sense. I don't think it will ever take off. I really think it's a gimmick. Movie theaters may get into 8K projectors, but still think about the cost of that. There's still thousands of movie theaters across the US that are using 2K projectors because most of the movies are presented from 2K digital intermediates. It costs a lot of money for people to upgrade from film projectors to digital, and now if you need to get them to go from digital to even 4K and then to 8K, it's just not going to happen. It's not feasible. The content's not there. The TVs are not you have to sit so close. It's just, there's so many factors going against it. And so my advice, first off, do not buy an 8K TV. You're absolutely, in my opinion, out of your mind if you go and spend $10,000 or more on an 8K TV. There is no reason for it whatsoever. Stay away from them. Don't listen to the marketing. None of it matters. Right now at CES, they can't even play moving images because they don't have any content. They're either displaying still images or very quick video loops because there's no content. Where if you look at a 4K TV at CES, they're playing movies. They're playing Wonder Woman, Aquaman. They're playing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. They're playing movies because those make sense for 4K and they don't make any sense for 8K. And I think what we should do is focus more on 4K and HDR and better technology when it comes to those panels, and especially those projectors. Focus on that and forget 8K. There's really no value in it, and I would highly recommend staying away from it. Read up on it. It's interesting, but please don't spend $10,000 and upgrade and then ask me why your 4K discs don't look great and why your Blu-rays are, you're not seeing any difference. I warned you. So thank you for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. There's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of good information, so I try to provide links to what I consider solid sources. So just make sure you're careful with what you're reading and what you're viewing online. You got to remember, marketing is always going at 100% to try to get you to upgrade to the newest technology. And sometimes it's great, and sometimes it just doesn't make sense. And in this case, it just doesn't make sense. So be careful, read up on it. Definitely watch other people's videos, read other articles. But the gist of it, I think, is going to tell you that 8K is not worth the effort. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. Like this video so others will see it. Check out all the links down in my description to different videos on this topic, articles, and then to Amazon links for my home theater, where if you want to upgrade to 4K or Dolby Atmos technology, come down to the Amazon links in my description. Buy a few things, you'll get what I have, and it helps support the channel. So I appreciate that. I appreciate everybody who's been viewing the videos lately, all the new subscribers. Tons of new content is on the way this year in 2020. So stay tuned for that. Hope you have a great rest of your week, and I will talk to you guys soon.